All right, I think it's time to start. Luckily for those that will join after this, there is a recording as asked for in the chat. So everything you see here will be recorded. So if you do miss a section, you can go back to it on the YouTube channel. But yeah, welcome everyone for joining the webinar, the technical webinar about Capture plugins. We're joined today by Eirik, who will run the webinar mostly with me on the sidelines. Um, and we'll be looking at two different kinds of capture plugins um, and how to actually build them from start to finish in a minimal version. And yeah, I mean, I don't have a I don't have a lot to add there because that's basically it. We'll be diving into code, and so hopefully your experience with code is with JavaScript and React is good enough to follow this along. But if not, you can still learn from how this works and what kind of opportunities this can bring to your organizations. But yeah, I'll hand it over to Eric. But I'll monitor questions in chat, and if I cannot answer them, I will save them for Eric after the presentation. There's plenty of question time, so feel free to pop it in the chat, and I will make sure to log it to be answered later. But yeah, take it away.
Thank you for that nice introduction, Renee, and thank you for all of you for joining. It's amazing to see that many people actually show up and register, and of course, it also it gives me and the others who have worked on this pretty warm feeling to see that there's so much excitement and so many people interested in this. Before I start off, I wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, is that the webinar is structured in a way so that I'll give you a short presentation about what capture plugins are. We'll take it all the way from the basics, and then we'll move on to more technical things. So I'll show you how to set up your plugins and apps, how to develop them, some best practices here and there on how to do it and do it in the best way possible. I'll also show you how to set them up in your local environment and use them on your development environment, and then take it all the way over to how to put it into production. And lastly, I want to show you what are the things that we know people are using it for now. I also want to say that even though I'm the lucky guy who can sit here and talk about this, I really want to say that this is a joint effort. Plugins is a big thing that we're working on, and I'm just lucky enough to be the galleon figure. Plugins are a joint collaboration between the tracker team and the platform team and the extensibility team and the analytics team. And there's really are a lot of people working on this. Yeah, but I can go through the presentation and try to teach what are capture plugins and what can you use them for. And then from there, just follow along. If you want to do the same thing as me, if you want to set up your own plugin as we go along and stuff, I will try to make it easy for you. I will try to make it easy for you to follow along and do everything at the same time. If you feel like you're lagging behind or there's some technical things that you don't really understand, please feel free to just sit back and try to understand the concept and try to see what I'm doing instead of trying to replicate it, because everything that I do will be shared for you to dissect it and go through it as you want to. And after this webinar, it will also be recorded as Renee said. All right. So first of all, what are capture plugins? So if we take it all the way down to the basics, you probably all know what the capture app is. The capture app is the new app that will be replacing the tracker capture app from version 42 and onward. 41 is the last release where we know that we'll bundle tracker capture, and from 42 you would have to move on to the new capture app. It's been available all the way from, I think, 236 or something. But we've continuously improved it and made it better, and from 238 and onwards, it was continuously released. So even if you're running on an older version, you can still use the newest version of the capture app. To some extent, there are some things that you cannot do, but that is handled by the app itself. So you can't really you will see some features missing here and there, but the app will work perfectly fine. So plugins are basically extension points that you as developers can inject your own code, your own business logic, um, just to be able to do some small integrations or tweaks or things that you sort of need to handle in your app. We know that our core apps, it will probably only take you 90% of the way. If you're doing advanced tracker programs or something, the chances are you will run into some place where our core apps just aren't specific enough for your use case. In the past, we know that a lot of people have then forked the tracker capture app and even forked the capture app just to be able to do these tweaks and do these integrations and stuff. If, for example, if you're doing a vaccine lookup or something, it was a very typical thing to fork the app and build this integration and have a forked version of the tracker capture or the capture app. The problem with this approach is that you now have a separate branch of this app, and as we at the core development team are still doing things to the app, then you will start to lag behind. And there are things done in the core app that probably wouldn't be part of your app. And over time, this will be very, very complex to handle. It will probably not let you upgrade to the newest version because things will break in your fork, and a lot of things. It can be very costly at scale. So the plugin extension points that were built in the Capture app are points where you can, instead of forking the entire Capture app, you can just build that little small section that does the separate business logic that you need to, and you don't have to fork the app. I'll show you a bit more what this actually means, because as of now, as Renee said, there are two plugin types that you can use. And the first one that I'll go through is the Form Field plugin. And the Form Field plugin is a plugin that you can put into all the different forms that you see throughout the Capture app. So on the right-hand side there, you see that I have a screenshot of my Capture app, and everything here sort of looks the same. This looks like a regular form, except there is a thing. The second section here is called Civil Registry, and you can see that there's some patient ID and there's a field type that isn't regular in the core apps that we know of. So this is a plugin, and it should look and feel like a regular React component or a regular form field. The only difference is that we provide everything that you need for you to do your custom logic. So we provide some sort of metadata for the things that you configure it. We provide the values of the different values in the form. We provide anything that comes from the rules engine, and we provide some other variables about how the form and user is interacting with your application. These plugins are what we call sandboxed. So for example, with the patient ID, you have to explicitly tell them that this plugin should have access to read and write for the first name attribute and the last name attribute and the gender and so on. And this way, you know that even generic plugins cannot really impact data that it's not touching. Some very typical use cases for this, you see on the right-hand side, we put in the patient ID and we called it Civil Registry. Civil Registry is a big thing that we know people will use plugins for. Basically, any kind of external API calls. We'll go through it a bit today, but integrating with other services, fetching some external API, getting some data from somewhere else, and then populating the form is very common. We also have more advanced components that we struggle to do generic enough. For example, using dependent fields like ICD-11, even ICD-10, where you have separate drop-downs that depend on each other, and it's very hard to do with just a rules engine. Plugin type number 2 is what we call the enrollment plugins. So if you're doing any kind of tracker program, then you know that there is a dashboard called the enrollment dashboard, and this is what I've screenshot on the right-hand side here. So in this case, we're within this Michael Taylor person, and you can see that there's a big new widget called the growth chart. And the growth chart is not something core. It's not something that will fit every tracker program. So it's very hard for us at the core development team to actually make this generic enough so that it fits. A growth chart is something that will work for a nutrition program or an immunization program and growth development program. But it wouldn't work for other things, right? It wouldn't work for a TB program. It wouldn't work for many kinds of use cases that we know DHIS2 is used for. So the enrollment plugin is plugins that you can inject into the dashboard. Typically, it would look and feel like a widget. We'll go through that as well. It can do anything that you possibly can imagine with React because it is just a React app. As that means it can do fetching of data from your DHIS2 instance. It can fetch data from external APIs. It can do any kind of custom validation. You can do growth charts. You can also do vaccine registry lookup. There's a lot of things that you can do with this, and your imagination is really the limit here. It's not a lot stopping you, but we'll go through the best practices and stuff. For that, I think I'll just jump in and we'll start to see how we can develop these things and how we can actually make them work on our local system. There is a couple of files. If you're following along and you're trying to do this at the same time as me, you would need access to this gist, or you would have to scan this QR code. I think Renee can probably paste this link in the chat and you can go there. There's not a lot of files, but it would be nice for you to have it if you're following along, because I'm using some metadata and stuff. But the first thing I'll do is that I need to spin up a DHIS2 instance running on my local environment. For that, I have the D2 package installed. If you don't have this D2 package installed, please please do it immediately. It will help you with a lot of things, including setting up new applications and setting up new DHIS2 instances running on your local machine. It's very good, and it's you can find it at the DHIS2 developers documentation here. So I am going to use the D2 for quite a lot. And there are two things that I need to do first. I want to spin up a new DHIS2 instance running locally. And I also want to create a new DHIS2 app, basically, to create my plugin in. We can start off with the app, actually. So for that, I'll just open up my my directory where I want to place this app. And I can write D2 app scripts in it, and then just call it something. So I'll call it the plugin webinar. And this will be the form field plugin, for example. I probably need to zoom in a bit so you can see. All right. And from that, the D2 package will start to initialize a new D2 application. If you've ever built a D2 application in the past, like a custom application that you import into your DHIS2 system, the workflow is exactly the same. So if you've done that, then you know what this is. I'll also open up a new terminal where I'll start up my DHIS2 instance running locally. And for now, it's just a D2 version running on version 41. I'll just call it plugin webinar. And the docs for all of this is available on the developer docs, so you can just copy what I'm doing here. So I'm setting the DHIS2 version to be 241.2, which is the latest 41 release at this time. I'm setting the channel to be stable because I want a stable release. And I'm also setting the DB version to be 241. And then from here, you can put seed if you want to see it alone in the database. I don't want that now, so I won't include it. But I do want to click the update so that I get the newest images and stuff. And from there, I'll just make sure that this spins up and it's fetching all the new images and stuff. And this will start happening in the background. You can see that I'm spinning up a D2 cluster for the plugin webinar. You can see what's happening under the hood there is I'm spinning up a new database, clean database with a core DHIS2 image running on 241.2, and also you get a gateway. All right, so let's see how this app initializer is working. It seems like that is done. So I'll cd into this, and then I'll just open this in my editor. All right. So here you go. This is just a DHIS2 application, regular DHIS2 application, and it gives you like a bootstrapped version where you do some data fetching about the logged in user and stuff. We can log into our localhost 8080 and see that our DHIS2 version is also up and running. If I log into this, then you see that everything here is clean and everything is fresh. All right. I also want to open up a new terminal in my DHIS2 app. And
Could you zoom in on the editor? Yeah, perfect.
thanks for reminding me. Just that this is a bit more readable at least. In the app, I'll just run yarn to make sure that everything is installed, and then from there I'll just yarn start. So I'll start up the app here, and that will open up my browser with a localhost 3000. I have the DHIS2 instance running, and here I also have the app running. Now, for the metadata that I want to import here, this is part of the gist where you'll see every link that I'm using. This also contains a metadata.json file. And this is the metadata that I want to download and just import into my D2 app. So I'll just open up this metadata.json file by clicking the raw and opening it up in Chrome, and just anywhere on the app, basically just copying and just save as. The save as will appear, and I can save it anywhere. So I'll save it into my well, save it in the repo that I just created. So that's cursor and then the plugin webinar form field, and just save it there. All right. The main setup is mostly done at this point. From there, I'll go to import export. To zoom in here as well, and click metadata import, and then just import the file that I just downloaded. So that as well is in the cursor folder and the form field, and you can see that I saved this file called the metadata.json here. All right. I can start a dry run to see that everything works correctly. And it does. If it says 81 created and 2 updated, then everything is good to go, and I can click the start import. This isn't necessary for using plugins at all. This is necessary for using the plugins that I will be developing in this webinar. So if you're not following along, you can just skip all of this and we can go into the development and we can start seeing there. So everything is imported now. If I open the Capture app, for example, in this newly imported instance, open up the Capture app, you can see that I now have a growth monitoring program and I have a lot of organization units and stuff, and things looks like it should. All right, we can go back to the app. The initialization is mostly done at this point. We're into the cool stuff, which is the development. You can still see that if I try to log in with this custom app, nothing is working. If you've ever built a custom app, you know this. If you go into the system settings and click access, then you're missing a course allow list down here. This is basically just a security measure in your browser that makes it so that if this isn't enabled, then you wouldn't be able to connect from external sources and stuff. For your local development, I'll just add localhost 3000, and just to make sure, I'll also add 3001 and 3002 because I know that we'll be using those ports. You can also use a wildcard to add all the ports at once. I go back into the app and I refresh. I should be able to get in like this. Okay, so we have an instance running with the metadata that we want. We also have a custom app that works, and we have the bootstrapped version of the custom app. Now we start getting into the plugin stuff. So I'll head back into my code editor here, and right now I'm in my app.js file, which is the app that you're seeing here. If I add a new paragraph with something, hello webinar, you can see that it gets updated in my app. So how do I get an app to become a plugin? If you go into the d2config.js, this is where you set your app entry points. And for now, we only have one entry point, which is the app entry point, which is just linking to the source/app.js file. If I go down into another line here and I write plugin, I can do the same thing for a plugin.js file. I'll set it to be a capital P just to make sure. And then I can create a new file called plugin.js. In this plugin.js, I can just import React like I usually would, and GitHub Copilot will help me out a bit here. But I'll just create a regular React component and export it default so that the app knows where to put up this this plugin. If I just stop my development instance on the app itself and just run yarn start again, you will see that there's something new that just appeared here. You can see that the app plugin webinar form field is now available in port 3000, is still there, and it was there the last time as well. But this time we also have a new thing called the plugin is now available on port 3001 at /plugin.html. So what this means is that the app is still running now. You can still use the app as you usually would. But if we enter the port 3001 /plugin HTML, HTML, and click enter, we now get the text plugin. So right now we've made a new plugin running from our app, and we've exposed it to the port 3001, and you can access this through the browser and stuff. And from here, we can actually do a lot of things just to so you can see what I'm on about. For example, if I set the background color to be red, it will be updated, and you have hot reloading and stuff, and things will sort of update as you go along here. And you can see what happens. I also want to just add some padding, I think. I want to add a background color, but I'll do something not as bright as red, so I'll do light blue, for example, or something. Yeah, that makes sense. So this is a plugin. It's just a React component that you can extend. You can do anything you want. You can do external link backhalls, and you can do anything that you can do in a React component. From here, first of all, we need to get this to start running inside of our Capture app. So right now, I'm doing the form field plugin, which means that I want it to appear somewhere in my form here. I want it to be connected to my form. I want it to have access to all the things that the form have access to, just to be able to do something cool with it. So the way that I configure this is that I need to go into the app management app. If I go into the app management app, from here you can download all sorts of things, and you can go into the app hub and see all the apps that are on the app hub, and you can download those into your local instance and stuff. Right now, I just want to go on the core apps, and I want to make sure that I have the latest version of Capture running. This is just a good health check to do before doing anything else. Just make sure that you're running on the newest version of the Capture app. From there, I'll also go into the app hub, and I'll search for a tracker. And there's a app here called the Tracker Plugin Configurator. What this app allows you to do is that it does a lot of the heavy lifting. The app is made by me, and it's currently supported to set up a lot of things in the Capture app. You don't have to use it, but I would, of course, recommend it, but I'm also a bit biased. If you don't want to use it, I'll also link to the documentation on how to do this. There is a separate tab down here called the Capture plugins in the DHIS2 developers. This is also linked in the gist, so you'll see it there. And you have the manual setup version for how to set this up without using the app if you don't want to use the app, and that's perfectly fine. But I've installed a newest version of the Capture app. I've also installed the Tracker plugin configurator app. And from here, we can open up the Tracker plugin configurator. Okay. How the Capture plugins basically work is that we put some extra configuration into the data store on your DHIS2 instance. What this app does is that it gives you a graphical user interface to set up this configuration. So you don't have to actually write the JSON and stuff for you. You don't have to write it yourself, I mean, sorry. This will take care of all the things that you need to do. You can just click the create keys here. What it will do is that it will create some data store keys and make sure that everything's set up correctly so that you can actually start using plugins. And if you click the create keys, this will work, and I can actually show you what it actually does under the hood. If you open up the data store management app, you see that it's created this thing called Capture up here. And underneath Capture, you also have some keys for the different things that you want to configure. So you have the data entry forms, and you also have for the enrollment dashboard, the enrollment new event, and enrollment edit event. Just a technical thing that you need to know. To be able to create those keys, and this is a bit important, to be able to create those keys, you need to either be a system, like a super user, or you need to have this authority here called create and edit capture data store configuration. This is a bit of a security thing, and this authority should only be put on the people that you sort of trust to do very, very high important things in your system. So this authority should not be given out to anyone. It should be carefully dealt with, and you should be aware of who you give it to, because they will basically be able to put in plugins pretty much anywhere, and plugins can be a bit dangerous if not used correctly. But I'll head back into the plugin configurator app, and from here I'll start setting up my plugin. And I'm still configuring the form field plugin, so I'll go into the form field plugin. I'll click the add configuration, and here you'll define where you want to add the configuration and who you want to add it for. I want to add it for the tracked entity type person, and I also want to add it for the growth monitoring program. If I click next, then you can see that this sort of matches up with the form that I see on the capture app. I can open up the capture app again so you can see as well. If I go into this one, for example, and click create a new person, you will see that I have the national ID and the first name and the last name. And from here, you can see that it matches. Now, we want to add an element here. And this is where all your installed plugins will appear. Right now, I don't have any installed plugins on my instance. So I would have to do this, which is called the add the local plugin. And we know that the plugin is now running on localhost 3001/plugin HTML. So I'll just copy this and put it in here and click add. And you can see that the local plugin is now added into my form, and I can drag it around and I can put it pretty much wherever I want. I can put it between the first name and the last name. I can put it on top. I'll put it on top for now, but it's totally up to you. You can also see that there's a warning sign over here, which I need to click. And then here is the thing that I mentioned about plugins being sandboxed. So since plugin are sandboxed, we don't allow you to read or write to any other attributes or fields that the plugin doesn't have access to. What this basically means is that you have to go through and set up, for example, the national ID. I want the national ID to be accessed by the plugin, and the plugin will refer to it as national ID. I'll go through what this means, but for now we just add the first name and the last name. And you can see that I'm adding something called the plugin alias here. This is what the plugin will refer to this field as. And I'll show you a bit more how this works. I'll save the configuration. Everything seems to be working fine. I'll open up back the capture app, and if I refresh, then you can see that the thing that I have running on localhost 3001/plugin HTML is now running inside my capture app. So everything looks good so far. If I go back into here, I can change the background color again, and you see that it hot reloads into my capture app, and everything seems to work fine. All right. So this is a good start. We have a plugin. It's running inside our capture app. We can now start to expand on this. We can do all sorts of crazy things that we want to do. I did mention something that we pass in the things that you need to be able to do something with a plugin. So right now you can see that this is just a React app. It's just rendering an H1. There's not really anything cool or big that's happening here. And for that, we need to extract the things that we get from the capture app, and we can use that to do any kind of logic. If you go into the back into the documentation here and click on the developer details for the form field plugin, you can see that we're giving you a lot of documentation on how to do things. So you can use this callback, which is called the set field value, to set field values and write back into the form, for example. You can also see that down here we're providing a TypeScript type. You don't have to write TypeScript. As you see, this plugin is just running regular JavaScript, but I do want to show you what running TypeScript also looks like, because we do support it natively through our D2. And it's not hard to set up at all. And again, you don't have to use it, but I'll show you how. And the only thing that you need to change is that you need to go into your D2 configuration again, and you need to change the .js, and you can switch it out to .tsx like this. I'll also go into the plugin.js file, and I'll rename it so that it's called tsx. And everything should be working as expected now. And the good thing about using TypeScript is that I can just copy everything of this types here. These types are the types that define what sort of prop we give you. This is basically everything that I mentioned in the PowerPoint as well. For now, I can just add a plugin that types .ts, and I can just paste in all of these types. I don't have to read it. I don't need to know what it says or anything, but I can just copy the form field plugin props on all the way on the end there. And like regular TypeScript, I can define that this is the props that we'll receive from basically the capture app in this case. What this gives me is that it gives me a lot of autocomplete. So you see that right now it says that you will get something called values, you will get something called errors, fields metadata, form submitted, a lot of these things that gets provided from the capture app. And if you've ever written a React component, this is exactly the same as just regular props. So we will provide them as props, and from here you can sort of use them to do all kinds of things. I'll get the values. I'll also get the fields metadata for now. And then I'll jump down on a couple of lines. I'll create a new div, and I'll just give it some style for now. Just give it some padding and just a border or something. Yeah, something like this, I guess. I'll add a pre-tag. And inside this pre-tag, I'll add the JSON.stringify values null to. You can see Copilot is helping me out a lot here, but yeah, let's see what this amounts to into my capture plugin. Oh yeah, forgot to start up. So once again, I can run yarn start. And you can see that the same message comes up. It's running the app on port 3000, and it's running the plugin at port 3001/plugin.html. If I go back into the capture app and I refresh, you can see that I still see the H1, but I also see a stringified value of the values object that we're passing in. Probably also add just a p tag top here, so it looks a bit better. So the values is national ID and a number, and also I'm given the enrolled at, which is just a date, which matches the enrollment date up here. You can see that the national ID is matching the number that is coming from DHIS2, which is just a unique generated key. You can see that the national ID here, the key for the national ID, it doesn't really match the label or anything. And this is because this is the plugin alias that I provided in here. So I can say that the attribute called national ID should be mapped to this plugin alias called national ID with a lowercase n and a capital I. The reason for doing this is if you write a good plugin and generic plugin and you want to put it into your production environment, you might also want to put it on multiple instances. You might want to use it here and there, or you might even want to push it to the app hub. What this gives you is the flexibility that you don't have to rely on IDs or codes or anything, but it would just give you like the custom alias that you have defined. So if I do something here, let's say I write in the first name and I just write something random, you can see that the first name is also provided as a value, and the value matches the thing that is put into the form. If I were to take this plugin and install it on some other system, which also has a first name attribute, but with a different ID, different code, different everything, I can just use this first name key to get the correct values and also write back to the correct place, even though everything is different in a different environment. It's just a thing to be aware of, is that every time you're trying to do something in the plugin, you would have to use this key or the plugin alias. All right. So you see here, we're passing in the values. I've provided it. If I go in here, I gave it access to the national ID, the first name and the last name, which means that here it has access to national ID, it has access to the first name. If I also give it access, or if I also write something in the last name field, this will be given. If I do something about the gender, and I click female here, for example, or male, this wouldn't be passed in because I didn't give it access to it. So the plugin has no idea that there even is a field here called gender. It has no idea. And if we try to write back to set something in the gender attribute, it would just throw an error and nothing will work. Let's see. Let's also look at the other thing that we're passing along, which is the fields metadata. So I'll rewrite this into metadata, and then down here I'll set this to be the fields metadata object. If I go back to the app, you can see that it's a bit bigger now, but it's still just an object, and you can see that the keys of the object are the same. It's national ID, first name, last name, and still no gender or anything. And you can see that here we're passing along all the different metadata things that you need to be able to do anything in your plugin. So from here, you can see if it's displayed in reports, displayed in forms, you can see the form name, you can see the code, you can see the display name, whether or not it's searchable, also whether or not it's unique. And even if it's unique, is it for the organization unit or the entire system? And you get a lot of metadata from this. Since we have TypeScript, we can also go through and see on all the different other things. So we can set the errors, for example. You can probably tell what this is. But if I change errors here, kit of Copilot will also give me errors down here. You can see that for now, it's just an empty string. But if I do something that will trigger an error, for example, remove the first name, we will also get the first name, and it will give you an array of all the different error codes, because there can be multiple. And the same thing will be for last name. Yeah, a lot of things. All right. So this is a good way for you to get the values and get the metadata. And yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's say that I want to provide just the values here. I'll set the values back here, so now you can still see the values of the form. And then from here, I want to start writing back to the form. I want to populate the form with something. And the thing that I probably want to do is that I want to fetch some sort of external resource and then write back to the things that I've given access to. So in this case, I want to write back to the first name and the last name, and yeah, probably also gender at some point. To do this, let's start off by just importing from the HS2 UI library. I want to import a button. And if I go down here, I can just write button, and it will say click me, and it will also give you a nice onClick that will console log a string called clicked. If I go back into the app here, you can see that it gives me a button that says click me, and if I open up the console when clicked, you can see that it also console logs out in my regular browser, just like a regular button would. Let's actually try to do some external API fetching. Let's do something that would resemble like a civil registry plugin. If you're just following along this thing right now, I'm going to show you the easiest way, just to like allow you to grasp the concept of what is actually going on. If you want to move this into production, you shouldn't do it this way, and I'll tell you all about it and why, and I'll also show you the best way to do it, the production way of doing it. But I'll show you what an external API call looks like, how you can use that to write back into your form. So before we do anything, let's write a new function up here that says fetch external data. It's just an async function, a regular function. And then you see that Copilot will help me out quite a lot. It's just a regular fetch. You can fetch anywhere, like a regular HTTPS call. For now, I have an API that gives me mock data, which I'm going to use. And it's also part of this gist. So we have the random user API down here. We can just copy this one and open up into Chrome. And if I just open it up like this, you can see that it gives me results. It gives me a gender, it gives me name, it gives me a date of birth, um, also like an age. Um, and what we want to do is that we want to fetch this API, get the data back, and then write the first name and the last name back into the field, for example. So if I go into the plugin here, I want to paste this in. You can see that it's using the seed like a national ID. We Let's start with just doing like a random number. Random 100, give me the random number, and then pre-fill this into the seed. So every time we run this fetch external API, it will create a new number and use that as a seed. So every time we click the button, it will be different just for demonstration purposes. Yeah. So let's write a function in here as well. And before we do that, we want to get the set field value callback. And if I hover over it, you can see that it's a callback. It takes in a set field value props, which you can dig into. I'll show you how it works. But for now, let's create just a new function that is fetch and populate. For example, it's an async function. It will call the fetch external data function that we just created up here. And then from here, we'll just do the set field value, something like this. And inside here, we want to set, we have three different things that we can set. So I'll set the field ID. And I want the field ID to be first name. And then I want the value to be, let's see what it returns here. It returns results, which is an array, and then name, and then first. So let's just do it very, very simple for now. So it will be data, the results, the first, the name, the first. Yeah, okay. Copilot apparently knew all about this one. All right. On this button down here, let's just um, call this fetch and populate function up here, just like a regular function and a button click. Also, just for clarity, I want to add a div around this. This just added a or something. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Let's see what's happening here. So we have the click me button down here. We also have the two functions that probably should be running. If I click it, I'll open up the console just to see what is happening. And if I click the click me, you can see that the first name was now populated with Friedrich. If I click again, it's Liam. If I click again, it's Antonio, and so on, and so on, and so on. This sort of makes sense, and this is the main gist of how civil registers work. You will fetch some sort of external data, get some data back, and then you will pre-process it and then call the set field value to write back into the first name attribute. If I go in here and change any of the attributes and blur it, you can see that it still works as expected. But every time we click the click me button, the same procedure happens again, right? Okay. We can also do this to add, for example, the last name, which is the name of last. And then I think that was everything that we could get out of it for now. So now if I click the click me button, it says Argemida Alves for first name and last name. All right. Of course, this thing isn't really typical, and it's not really common for for civil registries to just call some random number. We would usually use a personal ID or a patient ID or something that would resemble like a unique ID that would only give you one result. So I'm going to also switch out that, and I'll use the national ID that is generated from the system, which will probably match to some sort of personal ID in your country. You can see that I'm passing in this as a value already. It's called the national ID, and it's giving me the ID of the national ID. So I'll, instead of just generating a random number, I'll do that instead. I'll remove those things, and I don't want to use a random number. I want to use something called like a national ID. The national ID I want to pass in as a string. And then down in the fetch external data, I want to pass in values.national ID. And if you want to be super sure about this, you should probably do const national ID and then either values national ID or values national ID, depending on how you like to do it. And then of course do the if no national ID and so on. For now, we'll just keep it as values.national ID because in this system we know that it's there. If I go back into the plugin, I can refresh to get a new national ID. And when I click me, then I get something like this. If I click me again, you can see that sort of nothing's happening. It's still happening, it's just that it's fetching the same person. So the first name and last name would be the same. If I refresh so that I get a new ID and I click me, I would get the same thing. Marina Stepanovic, for example, and I would do the same thing. This is the main gist of how to do civil registries. You do some sort of fetching somewhere. This returns to some data, and you will do some pre-processing and write it back into the form. I did mention that this is probably not the correct way to do it. This is just for you to get an idea on how to call external APIs. The reason why you shouldn't do it like this, and I've actually written up like a like Skelly draw kind of thing. Let's assume that you have a server and then a web browser, which is basically the thing that we have now. We have an external API. In this case, it's a civil registry, but it can be anything. This is not running on our domain. It's somewhere else on the internet. For example, in this case, it's the randomuser.me API. What I'm currently doing in this plugin is that when I do the response await fetch, I'm doing a network call directly from the user's browsers from this place down here, and I'm doing it directly up to the external API. And I'm just bypassing everything on my own server. I'm basically just calling to somewhere else using my own browser. Security-wise, this isn't great. And also, if the external API would require some sort of authentication to allow you to fetch this data, which most civil registries do, there's not really a good way to do this. And you might even expose some secret to the browser or something to make this work. What you should do instead is that you should at least navigate the call back into your server. And then on the server side, you should try to navigate things over to the external API instead. So from the browser, you're calling something back into your server. So in our case, we would write something like localhost 8080, and it will take you back to the server. And then on the server side, you would either write something in the Nginx or an external API or something that will take in the request and basically fetch this external API separate, and then you can add all sorts of middleware in the middle if you want to. We also have this thing called the DHIS2 routes, which is a relatively new feature in DHIS2. I think it was introduced in 40, which is on the server side. What this routes allow you to do is that you can basically set up your DHIS2 as a proxy. So it will work exactly like this. You will set up a route, and you will define where this route will go. And then you can use access and sharing settings so everything is set up correctly, and only the people that you want to actually do this will be able to do it and stuff. And it's a really nice feature. I won't be going more in depth into this now because of time, basically. But it's super simple. You set up this is just a post call into your DHIS2 instance, just /API/routes, and you define which URL it should call when triggered. And then you can just do a regular get call to your /API/routes, and then the ID of this route, so it will be postman.get and then /run. And this will fetch the data for you and bring it back to your browser. I know that this is a bit technical. We have let's see. We have a reference implementation on how we want the civil registry to be done in production. This is the amazing extensibility team has spent some effort trying to set this up. This is basically everything that you need to set up a civil registry pointing to some sort of it can be anything. I think this ended up being like a fire or happy fire civil registry, but it can be anything. Um, okay, Renee, this is a bit, I'm not sure how to deal with this. The fire alarm just went on my building.
Okay, that is indeed something I did not account for.
That is something that I'll give it like a small minute just to see if it relaxes, but I might need to jump out for a couple of minutes here. Okay, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's shutting down. How do you want to deal with this, Renee? This wasn't in our
Um,
plan.
yeah, so I mean, ideally you should leave the building. But yeah, I will not be able to continue this myself. But
So I have to go.
uh,
Um,
yeah, yeah, sure.
Give me a couple of minutes.
Austin mentioned he's able to take over a little bit, so just come back whenever you can come back.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
And meanwhile, um,
Hi, everyone.
oh, there we are. Yeah.
I was not expecting to jump in here, but I can talk a little bit about what Eirik was just mentioning, which is the reference implementation with the civil registry that we just made public today. So I'll share my screen as well. I can show you what this looks like. There are still some additional kind of improvements and changes that will be adding to this in the near future. But it's a good kind of, the idea is that it's a good example of what Eirik has been demonstrating here, the how to use a plugin in the Capture app, but also some of the other tools or pieces that tools that we provide to be able to extend DHIS to do different things that it doesn't do out of the box. So this is available and we'll be posting something on this as well to the community of practice and to the developer portal. But basically, this is available at reference civil registry lookup repository in under the DHIS2 organization in GitHub. It has an example of how to use basically create a plugin for the Capture app to let people look up a patient by their national ID. So this assumes that in many countries, in many places, there's already a system in place for some sort of a national ID or a patient register somewhere where you might want to be able to look up some of the demographic information for a particular person when you're registering them into a new program or into DHIS2 for the first time. And in this example, we actually kind of create a fake environment for that plugin to run. So we have a few components that are kind of specific to how to implement civil registry lookup within DHIS2, and then some other components that are just there to kind of, they probably already exist in most existing or most implementations, but in this case, we also include them so that you can have a fully functioning end-to-end example of how this works. So obviously we have DHIS2, we have a civil registry, which in this case is Happy Fire, as Eirik mentioned. In this case, we're also using OAuth 2 for authentication. So we have a Keycloak server that's providing identity management, and a proxy that basically makes it so that only people who are authenticated with this Keycloak server can talk to the civil registry. So all these 4 components that are included in running in Docker in this example, probably in most implementations, you wouldn't need to add these, they would already exist. And in some cases, some different implementations have different setups here. So you might not have this OAuth protected civil registry. It might be just protected on an intranet, or it might be protected with an authentication header of some kind. There are different ways that this could exist. So these 4 components are basically spun up by a Docker Compose setup that we have in this repository. And then we have 3 custom components that if you were to implement this yourself to do civil registry lookup, you would probably fork or copy these components and change them a little bit to make it work for what you're doing. So those 3 are a civil registry lookup plugin, which is very similar to what Eirik just demonstrated, a bit more involved. It uses an API route to securely communicate with the civil registry. And it also has some different handling of different edge cases that you might not weren't there in the basic example. We also have and it basically has a search field that is added to the Capture app, and I can show that as well. And then we have a route that is basically just configuration within DHIS2 to be able to communicate between the Capture plugin in the browser and the civil registry that's running in the backend. And this is sort of a translation, a middleware layer that sits between DHIS2 and that civil registry that will make it easier to kind of switch out the civil registry without needing to change the plugin or different things like that. I see Eirik's back, so I'm going to wrap up here and give it back to him. But you can find the code for all of these components. So we have the code for that civil registry plugin. We have the code for the middleware that sits between DHIS2 and that backend. And we have a number of other things here as well. And all of that gets sort of set up in Docker Compose. So we have those different components that we talked about: DHIS2, the database for DHIS2, the gateway, the civil registry, which is running in Happy Fire, the Keycloak identity provider, proxy between basically it sits in front of the civil registry, and the middleware component as well. So yeah, hopefully you find this interesting. Very interested in your feedback. Like I said, we'll post this on the developer portal and in the community practice, and really look forward to hearing what you think about it and maybe how you use it in your own implementations. So yeah, happy to share that. Thanks for giving me that opportunity, Eirik. I know that was very thoroughly planned out. So I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no, thank you for stepping up to the. I'm sure we pulled this off perfectly, Austin, and it didn't seem
Sure.
like a plan at all. No, the absurd situation. I'm so sorry for it, but the fire is put out. Everyone is allowed to get back in, so let's move on. All right. So we're back in the Capture app. I think I've mostly covered most of the functionality for the form field plugins. Again, imagination is really your limit here. There's a lot of things that you can do. But for now, in the interest of time, I'll move on to the other plugin, which is the enrollment plugin. But again, if there are any questions, just post them down below, and we can do it after we've gone through all the demos. For this, I will create a new person, and I will create this Marina person using the plugin that we just created. And then once that person is added to the system, I will be navigated into the enrollment dashboard over here. And this is just the standard enrollment dashboard for everyone. And one of the things that was introduced a while back ago was that this dashboard is basically configurable for most programs, for all tracker programs. And this can also be done through the tracker plugin configurator app. And if you go into here, you can add a new configuration for the enrollment plugins. I will add it for the growth monitoring program, and then open up the different things that I can do it. Here you're prompted with the 3 different enrollment pages that we have. We have one for the enrollment overview, we have one for the enrollment new event, and one for the enrollment edit event. So this is basically, you can set up different configurations for this page and the new event page, and also the edit event page. If I had yeah, I could probably do it quite quickly. We just put in some dummy values, and as you can see, this is part of a growth monitoring program, which means that it will allow you to do child visits and follow up on their development and growth over time. This is the view and edit event page that I'm talking about. You can set up a different configuration for this as well. Let's start off by just showing what you can do, and click start. And once you're in here, you can basically configure everything. You can move components over from one column to another. This is the quick actions, for example. I can move that over on the right-hand side, and I can click save. And when I open back up the Capture app, you can see that it's now put on the right-hand side. And this is done on a per program basis. So this can be done for the growth monitoring program, for example, but it will look the same for a TB program running on the same instance, for example. And you can set this up exactly how granular that you sort of want it. This is just the default layout. What I want to do here now is that I want to also add a plugin on top of the error widget over on the right-hand column. And I'll do exactly the same. I'll create a new app. I'll just do it once more, just so everything's clear and on board. I'll go back into the directory where I started, and once again, I'll do D2 app scripts init, and then I'll just call it the plugin webinar enrollment plugin, like this. And this will start to bootstrap my new application and set things up exactly the same as the previous one, the last one. And let's see. All these things are things that can mostly be ignored. But to set up a new application again, you run the app scripts init command. You go into the repository, and you go into the D2 config, and like there, it's done. You go into the plugin webinar enrollment plugin, and then just open this in my editor. And then from there, I'll do this exactly the same as the last time. I'll go into D2 config, I'll add a plugin entry point. This will autocorrect for source/plugin.js. I still want to use TypeScript, so I'll do that, but you can just use regular JavaScript if you want to. I'll create a new file, plugin.tsx. And from here, I'll just import React, and then just export default a component. then GitHub Copilot will help me out quite a bit here. All right, I can open up a new terminal. I can write yarn, start. Everything's the same. You can see that it's running the app on localhost 3000 and then the plugin on 3001/plugin.html. This is the default app. If I also open up 1000/plugin.html, you can see that it's running plugin. And if I do something, this is a plugin, it gets updated. All right. So how do I get this into the enrollment overview dashboard like this? It's pretty much the same as what we did the last time. It's quite simple. You click the add button where you want to add it. You enter in the URL to the plugin instance. So just write plugin.html and add it. And you can see that it's now added on top here. It's a local plugin, which is why it's displayed like this. Open up the Capture app again, and you can see we now have a plugin. This is a plugin. We allow you to style this pretty much however you want. You can just use the widgets that comes from the Capture app, and you can use it as regular. But we do allow you to style it however you want. Just for simplicity now, I'll just add some style. Padding 10, I'll just say that the background color is something around there. Border radius 5. Just add a border or something so it will look. Actually, let's just do white. Like this. It will look mostly the same. All right. So with this plugin, what can you do from here, and what sort of props do we pass along in the same way that we did with the form field plugins? So I'll open up the developer documentation. I'll go down into the enrollment plugin over here, and I'll open the developer details. And you can see that the props that we're passing along and the types for those props are a bit smaller. I'll do the same thing where I create a plugin types TS. Doesn't have to be called that at all. It's just a personal preference. And then just export it so that I can use it in my component. Copy this over and there. Right. So now I have full autocomplete of everything that we pass in. The TypeScript is giving me autocomplete on the different things that we're passing in, but you can see that it's a bit different than what the form field props are. Here we're mostly passing in the IDs, and then we're also passing in one callback that's just called navigate, that you can use to navigate the user around. We can, just to show you, we can do the same thing here where we add a div. Let's just do a background color of light blue on that one as well. Padding 10 is fine, border radius, yeah, something like this. Add a pre, and then just map out everything so you can see what it is. Open up the Capture app again, you can see that we're passing in those kinds of things. And you can see that the IDs that we're passing in here matches the one that you can see in the URL of the instance that we're in. So the program ID matches the growth monitoring program, for example. The org unit matches the org unit that you're in. Enrollment ID, tie ID, and so on and so on. We give you the IDs of the context that you're in. We don't pass in any data because we want to leave that up to you. From here, you can do exactly the same. So you can set up, for example, let's actually just do that quite quickly. I'm just trying to move through things now because I'm seeing that I'm running slightly out of time. But we can import the use data query like this. And this is typically how you would fetch data in a D2 application. You can set up a query object, Let's query, and we can just fetch enrollments, which is tracker/enrollments, and set up the ID to be the enrollment ID. And then let's just do params just to set up a field, something like this. This looks all right. Okay, let's just do star for now. In the use data query, we can add this query. This will give us the data, the loading, and the error back. So if we try to map out this as well, if it's not loading and there's no error, we can stringify the data object. It will look something like this. I'll just add a flow auto, I think will work. All right. So here you can see there's a lot of data being fetched. We don't need all of that data. It's can probably also do data enrollment, so that's simpler. Yeah, as you can see here, we're fetching some. Oh, needs to add the variables. Simpler. All right, there you go. So we can fetch a lot of this data coming from your DHIS2 instance. So here with only the IDs that were provided, I'm able to fetch all of the data. And from here, we can do exactly the same as you can do in a form field plugin. So here, for example, you can set up something to be triggered based on the events that you're fetching. For example, you have all the data values, you have relationship, you have attributes, all of these different things that you sort of can use for your custom logic. We can also do something like we can use the use alerts package from the app runtime, which will give us a show. That's wrong. Let's just do something like show, and from here we'll say that it should say hello again. I'm sort of doing this as we go along now, so that might not work perfectly, but let's just do a use effect. And we want to say that if there are any data enrollment, then we can show this one, for example. Let's use alert probably. Let's see what happens. The plugin loads, it fetches some data. If there is data there, it will trigger like an alert or something. From here, you can write all sorts of business logic. One of the things that we know that this might be used for example, is what if you have dependent fields? Let's say you have like an introduction stage as the first stage, where people will register an event where it's like a contact form or something for the person that they're trying to reach. And then from there, we want to automatically schedule a new event in the second stage, for example. You can write all of this business logic in the plugin where you don't exactly have to create a new schedule event, but you can say like this person is missing a scheduled event in stage B. There's a lot of these things. Before we end off, I also want to show you an instance where this is mostly set up and configured in a way that we know it will be used. And for that, I think I have this one. Yeah, okay, we can do it from here. This is an instance where we set up with both the form field plugins where you can search and set up with a civil registry, and this is the things that that Austin talked about. And also, if you go into the enrollment dashboard of one of these people, you can also see the growth chart that was developed for the 41 release and can be installed, and it's super simple to install. I'll show you with this plugin here, how to build it and manually upload it into your instance. It really is super simple. If we stop this, go back into the D2 config, we can just add a name for now and perhaps a description. Enrollment, let's say enrollment dashboard or something. We can probably add a version as well. This is not something that you need, it just allows you to display it in a bit better way. From there, just run yarn once just to make sure that everything's set up. You can run yarn build. D2 app scripts will do all of the heavy lifting. It will build everything, bundle it together. Once that it's actually done, you will get a build folder in your repository, which will give you both the built sort of source code, but also a built zip file bundle of your app. So here, this build folder was added, and underneath you get bundle, and then you also have the enrollment plugin bundle. If I go into this instance, which is running on our DHIS2 run instances running in the cloud, I can go into the app management app. I can go to App Hub. I can see that the tracker plugin configurator is installed. I can go to the manual install and upload an app. From there, I can find the app that we just created, which is the enrollment plugin. I'll find the build and just find the bundle, the zipped version of the app that we just created. I'll upload that, and it says app installed successfully, and everything looks quite good. If I go into the tracker plugin configurator, I can go into the enrollment overview and just edit the growth monitoring program. You can see that the capture growth chart is already there, but I can edit it. I can also add this one, and you can see here on the right-hand side that I now have available plugins as something to choose from. This one is the one that we just created and uploaded, enrollment plugin. So I can add that to the list. It's now on the top there. If I save it and just go back into the capture app and find a person, like the wrong org unit, find the person, you can now see that exactly the same plugin is running in my hosted environment, and it's not running like a local host thing anymore. It's just running on your cloud environment, and everything should be good to go to start using it in production. Of course, all the security measures the same as your DHIS2 custom apps. Make sure that only the people that need access to the plugin does have access to the plugin. Make sure to not fetch any more data than what you're actually using. A lot of these considerations that you can take in mind, but overall, setting up using plugins is really very, very simple, and it does allow you to do a lot of crazy things. With that, I think I'm mostly done with what I'm displaying. So I'll open this back up, and I'll say thank you, and I'll give the floor back to Renee. And I want to say, if there are any questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can send me an email at eirik@dhis2.org. Or if you're part of our Slack, you can also just send it there. It's Eirik. And yeah, thank you all for joining. I'll give it back to Renee.
All right, thank you, Eric, for your presentation, including the hiccup that we did not anticipate.
Yeah.
We've still ended nice in time. And I've asked people to put questions in the chat, and there have not been any questions that have not yet been answered. So far, it's been very clear. And I honestly think that too, that it's very clear. And besides what has been said, I think we're pretty much done there. What I want to say is, and that's also been put in chat, but I want to say that the recording of this presentation it's already on YouTube. It's a live stream at the moment, but as soon as we stop this, with this session, it will be available as a video you can instantly rewatch. So that's a good one to have. Yeah. I'm just reading the chat here. Are there any plans to support these plugins in the Android Capture app? I don't know what the Android team is actually doing on that level. I'm not sure if there's anyone from the Android team or anyone else in the here. Eric, do you by any chance know that?
I wouldn't know exactly when or how they will implement this, but they are looking into a lot of the SDKs things where you can do custom things on top. Austin is probably more informed about this.
Yeah, I can just say that definitely extensibility on the on Android side is something that the Android team is looking into. It is a very different environment than running in a browser in the web, so the solution will be a little bit different to be able to extend there. But there are ways to do some kind of customization and extension of the Android app. You can, of course, create your own Android app using the SDK and use some of the building blocks that already exist in the existing Capture app to basically build it with some customizations. So there are ways to do this already in Android. It's not quite as easy or as modular as it is in the web. But that's something that the team is definitely looking into.
Well, thank you so much, Austin. I don't think there's any more questions. Yeah, I guess that's it for today. Thank you for all for joining the webinar today. As I said, the recording will go up on YouTube and also will be posted this in the community of practice. And you can also put these questions that you have or have not been answered yet in the community of practice on the post for this webinar in the announcement channel, and we will be able to get to your question as well, or just reach us on any of the other channels that you're familiar with. And oh, there's one last minute question. We can dive into that. Some plugins for visualization items. Do we have plugins for visualization items?
Yeah, so I saw Austin put in a comment to that one. It is part of the roadmap for the dashboard app to support this a bit better. Plugins for dashboard has been available for some time, and they are really aligning this so that it will be easier to use. I'm not sure if you have anything you want to say out loud, Austin.
Yeah, just to add to that, I'm not sure if this question is about embedding visualizations in other apps, like using plugins, because the Android app, or sorry, not the Android apps, the other visualization apps, the Maps app, the Data Visualizer, etc., line listing have plugins that they expose that's how the dashboard includes them, for example, and so it can be used by other apps. That's one thing. And then the other, as Eric mentioned, the dashboard has supported plugins for quite some time, plugin widgets. It was a little bit of a different approach previously, but in the next week or two, I believe we'll be seeing a new version of the dashboard app, which supports basically the same exact workflow and the same way to build plugins that Eric showed here today. Those can also be embedded on the dashboard app as basically to add visualizations, add different things that you might want on in analytics world rather than in capture world. So yeah, definitely something that has been supported for some time. You can already build widgets that you can put on the dashboard, but that will be improved and kind of aligned with what we're seeing here in the capture side as well. Over. Great question. Thanks.
Awesome. Then I want to thank everyone for joining, and hopefully you will start building plugins soon. And if you make anything awesome, then please share it on the community of practice or on the app hub. That would be even more amazing. But yeah, thanks for joining, and hopefully see you in the next webinar as well. Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Austin.
Thank you, everyone.